It started with a bark. Literally. One bark too many, according to Karen from the HOA, and just like that, I was hit with a $40,000 fine for nuisance behavior, all because my golden retriever, Max, liked to greet passing joggers. I wish I were joking. 5 days later, I got a letter in the mail stamped with red HOA violation final notice. And buddy, I nearly choked on my sandwich. Now before you assume anything, let me lay it out for you. I'm a single dad, ex-cop turned paralegal, moved into this charming, gated community in northern Arizona because it seemed like a good, quiet place to raise my daughter after my divorce. Nice yards, well-maintained sidewalks, monthly farmers markets, and that sweet neighborhood feel folks love to brag about. What no one mentioned was the Iron Fist HOA board, chaired by none other than Karen Whittington, a retired business consultant who practically carried a citation pad in her purse. Max, my dog, has been with me through a lot. He's therapy certified, gentle as a lamb, and frankly, more socially well-adjusted than most people I know. He's also got a loud bark, sure, but only when he sees someone he wants to say hi to. That's not a crime. But according to Karen, it was. She claimed Max was a menace and had caused emotional distress to 3 residents. One of them, her cousin. Another, a woman who'd been seen feeding Max bacon a week before. The HOA rules, she said, allowed for cumulative fines if the public disturbance wasn't resolved. The math? $100 a day, dating back over a year with administrative adjustments. I'll be real with you. At first, I laughed. Then I called the HOA office thinking it was a mistake. The receptionist nervously told me the board had convened privately, and this was a final determination. If I didn't pay, they'd move to place a lien on my home. And that's when it stopped being funny. Let me pause here to say I know a little something about the law. Enough to know what's real and what's HOA fairy tale. I pulled out the bylaws. I combed through the Arizona HOA statute. I even spoke to an old buddy of mine who works in HOA litigation in Phoenix. What we found, this fine wasn't just outrageous. It was illegal. First off, they'd never issued me a formal warning. Strike one. Second, the daily fines required an in-person review and documentation of every offense, none of which existed. Strike two. Third, and this is the juicy part, the HOA had changed the fine structure 6 months after the violation supposedly started, then applied them retroactively. Big. Fat. Strike three. So I wrote a calm, polite letter asking for an appeal. The response? Your appeal window has closed. Karen even wrote in the margins, we suggest you consider relocation if your dog cannot be controlled. I wish I was making that up. All right, gloves off. I filed an injunction. Yep, I went straight to court. My goal wasn't just to stop the fine, it was to hold the HOA accountable for abusing their power. I cited every statute they broke, including one that made their entire process subject to due process, which they ignored. I also dug a little deeper into Karen's history, and wouldn't you know it, she'd been reprimanded 2 years prior for issuing fines without a quorum. When I showed up to court, Karen had brought a lawyer HOA funded, of course. I brought facts, photos, testimonies from neighbors who loved Max. Even a video of one of the so-called victims laughing as Max rolled over for belly rubs. Their case crumbled faster than a dry cookie. The judge didn't just toss the fine, he reprimanded the HOA for abuse of power, issued a temporary freeze on their ability to levy fines without oversight, and demanded they refund any similar illegal penalties from the past 2 years. For Karen, that meant a formal warning from the HOA Oversight Committee and mandatory retraining. But that's not even the best part. 2 weeks later, at the next HOA meeting, a surprise attendee showed up, an older man in a wheelchair named Don Alvarez. Turns out, he was one of the original founders of the community back in the 90s and still held honorary voting power. Quiet, stern, and sharp as a tack. He asked to speak. In a slow, deliberate voice, Don said he'd received complaints not about my dog, but about the board. He'd been quietly gathering resident stories, and what he'd found was deeply disturbing. He proposed a motion for immediate oversight reforms, and the room packed with pissed-off neighbors roared in support. Karen's face? White as drywall. Within a month, Karen voluntarily stepped down. Her cousin left the board, too. 3 new members, including a local school teacher, a vet, and Don's daughter-in-law took their place. The first action they passed? a permanent ban on retroactive fines, and a neighbor mediation policy for animal-related complaints. Now Max and I still walk every morning. He still barks. And people? They wave. You know, it wasn't about the $40,000 in the end. It was about principle. About standing up to petty tyrants in khakis who think a title gives them power over your life. About not letting a bad system punish good dogs. And if you ask me, the sweetest justice wasn't the court ruling. It was seeing Karen avoid eye contact when she walked past my driveway, now decorated with a cheerful little sign that reads, "This home protected by bark and justice." Thanks for sticking with me through this story. What do you think? Was I in the right to fight this all the way? Have you had to deal with an overreaching HOA before? I'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed the story, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel for more real-life HOA drama and legal showdowns. Appreciate you being here, and bring your popcorn for the next one.